I'm Asterales Sedai of the Yellow Aja. Here are the moments I love in Season 1, Episode 1, Leavetaking, of The Wheel of Time on Amazon Prime. If you're like me and can't get enough positive Wheel of Time content in your life, please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Spoiler warning, I will be discussing characters and events from Episode 1, as well as referencing objects and ideas described in the book series, but not specific plot points or character arcs from the book series. Let's go! Alright, so we have Moiraine Sedai's belt knife. Now, chronologically, we first saw this knife in New Spring, which is the prequel novel to the Wheel of Time series, and my personal headcanon is that this is the same knife that she used then. We are literally 30 seconds into the show and they are already showing so much stuff for the book readers. This is an Angreal. So in Eye of the World Chapter 8, this is referred to as a smooth ivory figurine, aged darkened to deep brown. No longer than her hand, it was a woman in flowing robes with long hair falling about her shoulders. I love that we see this straight away. When Leandrin Sedai says, "There's no one else here," I get chills. I'm sure you've all seen Fight Club, and I think this was a really, really efficient way of introducing the idea of madness. I love Kate Fleetwood as Leandrin, and I think she just absolutely nails this scene. Alright, now Daniel Henney's glorious eyebrow raise here is another nod straight from the books. The quote is, "She was watching for some sign, or she would not have seen the quick twitch of his eyebrow. It was not often she caught him by surprise." Now, this is a blink and you'll miss it scene. You might have gone, are they skyscrapers? So here's a quote from Crossroads of Twilight. "A thing called a lift. The flying machine sounded much grander, of course, but it was far easier to envision a mechanical contrivance that whisked you from floor to floor." Now, just before this, Nynaeve has just said, "Feel this braid." And here we have the wonderful actress Madeline Madden, who had this amazing quote in a Marie Claire article here in Australia, and she said, "Mum's passed on so much insight and wisdom and love and acceptance to us that I felt like whatever I could come to her with, I would be accepted." I've heard Madeline say in another interview that she felt really blessed that she could bring something of her Aboriginal heritage into this scene, and it was something that she was very proud of. And I was just so thrilled to see this as well. Now, a lot of us will have already seen this in the trailers, and we've already commented on what it represents, but I think it's worth mentioning again. So this is also a really beautiful way of picturing how the magic system is used in the Wheel of Time, or channeling as it's known. And there is a quote in The Great Hunt where one of the Aes Sedai is explaining to someone about channeling, and she says, "You cannot make it happen," the Aes Sedai was saying. "You must let it happen. You must surrender to the power before you can control it." Again, this is straight out of the books, and in fact it is straight out of Chapter 1, The Eye of the World, and it refers to the fact that the wind is coming down, and it comes down into the two rivers, into the tangled forest called the Westwood, and beat at two men walking with a cart and horse down the rock-strewn track called the Quarry Road. This is another little Easter egg moment when Matt rolls the dice and throws them down onto the table and they all roll out. It's kind of reminiscent of one of the chapter icons in the Wheel of Time. All right, this little moment is so good. So Perrin goes, "She looks normal," and Rand immediately interrupts him and goes, "Quiet, who knows what she can hear?" And I love this because it's establishing that Moiraine, or an Aes Sedai rather, is someone that they've only ever heard about in a story, and they're basically seeing a fairy tale come to life, and they don't know everything about her. They don't know everything about what an Aes Sedai can and can't do, and that's a really important concept, which is that characters are going to be making decisions and taking actions based on misinformation, or just not knowing what's actually happening in the world. All right, so no surprises here to say that this is obviously a scene that I had to watch carefully in slow motion a few times to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing. And I just want to point out that the tub has a ledge all around it, like a seat or a step, and you can actually see and hear Lan stepping down into this tub. So yeah, I'm sure that's what you were all looking at in this scene. I love this scene because it does so much. It's A, showing their relationship, B, it's showing another use of the one power, and C, it's a little reminder that the Two Rivers is kind of a backwater of this world. All right, poor Rand's face here. I have to admit, I had a bit of a giggle because it reminds me of an episode of The Simpsons when Bart says, "If you look closely, you can actually pinpoint the exact moment his heart breaks in two." And here we see the cloaked rider, or the Fade, that's coming into town. Now, Fades in the book had a really specific cloak that didn't move with the wind. And I always thought, like, okay, this is something that obviously they're going to have to cut out of the show because that's just going to look weird. Or if they spend CGI, that's really not practical. But when I saw this, I was kind of like, oh, is that cloak actually really quite heavy? I don't know. I think it actually holds down quite well, and I wasn't expecting to see it, and I thought it was quite a nice touch. Another blink and you'll miss it line is Tam saying, "It's never too early for your mum's bread." And this is just beautiful. Once again, this is actually another nod straight out of the books, and this is from Eye of the World, Chapter 2. Mistress Alvia bustled out of the kitchen, the aroma of fresh-baked bread wafting ahead of her. The tray in her hands carried some of the crusty loaves for which she was famous around Emmons Field. Look, TV adaptations are really hard. You have to be absolutely brutal in terms of what makes it into a show. And I think the fact that they were able to keep a tiny little detail like this is just really, really beautiful. Yosha. I think this face says it all. I look at this and I think, yep, this is the face of a sheep herder who's currently experiencing the worst day of his life. Now, today is the morning after the night before, and he's just found out that his wonderful dream of, growing up in the Two Rivers, marrying Egwene, having children, raising sheep, this is just all been shattered. And it's just a really beautiful scene between Rand and Egwene, and I'm so glad it's in here. Okay, now I don't know whether this is meant to be an Easter egg, but this absolutely to me looks like Snow White's witch looking out over Disneyland. It actually exists in Disneyland. And this is a photo from the Duchess of Disneyland, who does an online blog, and this shows what this looks like. Do you guys agree with me? I think she's the Wicked Witch. This was another giggle moment for me, and it was actually acknowledged by Prime Video as well, and they tweeted, "MacBook screensaver or the Wheel of Time scene?" This is just a really beautiful sequence here, and it's a bit of a pause before the calm before the storm. And here Michael McElhatton says, "All we can do is the best we can with the life that's given to us." And obviously he goes more into it, and it ends with, "The wheel keeps turning." His voiceover here is just perfect. I don't know about you, but the idea of a heron-marked blade coming in a heron-marked box is just so adorable, and whoever thought of this, you are a genius. Thank you. The significance of a heron-marked blade is something I'm sure they're going to go into later in this season, but I'll just let you know for now that I literally stood up and cheered at the TV. Now, Rand's face here, he clearly is thinking, oh my goodness, it's like he's seeing his father for the first time. And there is actually a quote that matches this, and it's when Rand is thinking about the sword, which is that his father might own one had never even occurred to him. This was a really realistic fight scene. I find sometimes if they don't get the balance right, I really get thrown out of the whole fantasy. But this was done so well. I really believed in Michael McElhatton's performance here. This is someone who used to be amazing with the sword, and you can still see him doing, all the proper sword form movements, but he's clearly a guy who hasn't done this in a long time. He's rusty, and his reflexes aren't what they used to be, but you could see in this performance it was really gritty. It felt real. It felt realistic. Oh, how we love you, Nynaeve. If there's one person from the Two Rivers who would shout at a Trolloc in defiance, we all know who this was going to be. Now, both Daniel Henney and Rosamund Pike have talked in many, many interviews at length about what went into this fight sequence and the choreography involved and how they need to, basically intuitively know each other's movements. And I just wanted to give another shout out of appreciation for how much went into this. This is Moraine, you can see she's so zen in this moment, and she's just ducking down as Lan comes over the top of her to take out the Trolloc behind her. Now this right here, this is women's circle business, and don't you mess with it. Now, I've got a visual here, but honestly, this one is more about the sound. Please, all of you, go back and watch the fight sequence and just listen to it if you can. I cannot get enough of the electric charging up sound before the lightning. It is just the best. This is just going to be a shout out to the Trolloc costumes. I think they are amazing. I love the fact that they are actually real people in there, running around, jumping, being thrown about in all of these scenes. A couple of cute little trivia. Those horns were actually magnetic, so you could swap them around and change them to create sort of like infinite combinations of Trollocs, which I thought was just so clever. And if you watch the behind the scenes featurette on this, you get to see the really cool prosthetic legs that they were walking on, or not just walking, like running and fighting on, that gave them their height. It's just so cool. One of my biggest fears when I found out that The Wheel of Time was going to be made into a TV show was that the channeling was going to look really silly. And I don't know why I had this fear. I guess because I know it would just be so hard to do, to make it look, decent and realistic. And I'm going to admit, when I was watching this battle sequence, I literally broke down in tears because I was just so overwhelmed with how good it actually looked and how how I was actually seeing channeling come to life on screen. And I mean, there are so many reasons for this. One, obviously, it's Rosamund's performance here. She's just such an amazing actress. You got to remember, she's there on set with none of the CGI or anything like that added in, and she's just moving her arms around, which could look really silly if you think about it, but it absolutely works. Everyone that would have been involved in this, the lighting, it looks realistic, because lighting, if you get that wrong, that just it totally throws off the whole sequence. But it was done right here. It looks really good. The sound adds so much to channeling. So I think, again, I mentioned before with the lightning sound of that charging up, it's just so wonderful. And just hearing channeling all put together on screen it was too overwhelming for me, and I just loved it. For me, this is one of the really iconic scenes that I'm going to take out of this episode, and it's a warder protecting his Aes Sedai. And Brandon Sanderson, so he is the author who finished books 12, 13 and 14 of The Wheel of Time. He posted on Reddit that this was actually one moment that he suggested to be added into the episode. And I just want us all to take a moment to marvel that a change from a book writer was actually taken on board by the studio that was adapting this series. So I think we all just need to remember, how lucky we are as Wheel of Time fans that we have people who respect the books and what they meant in bringing this to life. Now, in this moment when we hear Rosamund's voiceover begin, the Wheel of Time turns. I couldn't believe that we might actually get to hear this sequence. So, for those who haven't read the books, this entire sequence that she voiceover narrates is the opening paragraph of every single book. And it was just so perfect to end episode 1 this way. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the Wheel of Time, but it was a beginning. Now, Brandon Sanderson has said that what happens in the TV show is not the third age that we see in the books, but it's actually the next third age that comes around. And I think this is a really clever way to approach the show. And it's a bit like the What If Marvel series. Honestly, I have been, so surprised at how true to the books they've been so far, even for a pilot where there's so much that's needed in a pilot in terms of what you need to do to, start introducing all the characters, give people names. And for a fantasy series, you're also introducing, strange and unusual concepts. And there's always lots of weird terminology that, that's strange. I think they've done this so well. Pilots are so hard to do, particularly for fantasy. And, you know, episode 1 is a really, really solid start, and I can't wait to see more. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed my thoughts on episode 1, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for future updates. And remember, yellows make the world a better place.